dyed my hair. So y'all are probably wondering about my hair. Warning, the following program is recorded live and is not intended for children. This program may contain graphic and dark content that may be distressing for some viewers and against the terms of service for most mainstream platforms. The themes and opinions expressed in this program should be considered entirely fictional and should not be used for political or academic purposes. Facts are not checked, and no sources or citations will be provided. Should you choose to redistribute this, please do so only in good faith. Thank you again for joining us. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome back to Rainbows and Razor Blades, an active disinformation campaign written by a human, but you wouldn't know the difference if I was an artificial intelligence telling you I was a human. By the Gregorian calendar, it is currently the 30th day in the 12th month, the last month of the year, the month of December, in the year of the Lord, 2022. By the solar calendar, it is currently the 100th day of the year. I dyed my hair this morning, just like straight up, just took some hair dye and some whatever the other stuff that you're supposed to add to the hair dye to make it do whatever it does, the conditioner, the expressor, the expulsionator, the aerator, what the fuck is it called? The producer, the exchanger, the fuck is it called? People who know more about hair are losing their minds. Like, you can do it, Sarah. God damn you can do it. Man, if I was on your trivia team and I couldn't remember this, that would be dropping the ball. The exfoliator. There's like a bunch of like female words that I never grew up with, and I don't mean the gender language. Like, some languages inherently gender language. And I don't mean to like say that hair dye is inherently a female word. It's not what I mean. It's just to say that like the females, at least when I was growing up learning all these like things about hair and stuff like that, and I mean that's not an excuse for why I can't remember it now. It's just that it isn't already in my databanks from childhood. That's all I really mean to illustrate, because I was male. And that's sad. Like, that's like legitimately sad, because like boys just weren't allowed to dye their hair. Like, they'd be like, fuck you, faggot, why are you dyeing your hair, little bitch? Were you gay? I'll rape you. Like, that was like legitimately how boys talked to each other back when I was like a boy. And it was fucked up. It was bad. And it traumatized a good portion of the generation. And I think that trauma is only beginning to express itself as some of those people have kids. I don't know where it goes from there. I hope that the liberal women that they eventually, inevitably have children with, if they're gonna have children. I think a lot of us are not. Oh, geez. We're having kids later, and we're having kids at not necessarily more money, but more mature for our ages. And it's just like, it's a very different generation that we're raising. My generation. Very, very different. Almost every, like, some of us are still doing it the traditional old ways. And it's probably working just fine for those people. With your fucking house and your fucking car and your kid in the fucking lawn. Wow. But, I don't know. I never learned about, you know, the prepper, what's it called? Where you have hair dye, but then you have to mix it with like 50% of this other thing. The opener? I don't remember. But anyways, I mixed it together, and then I put it in my hair. Now, there's another more complicated part of that, which is bleaching it, which I did not fuck with, and I've actually not fucked with on my own. I will someday, probably in the very near future, because eventually what's going to happen is I'm going to get sick of having only this part be red, as this part, because like you can see, it still is able to hold dye pretty far up. And that's because all of this hair where it isn't holding dye, that's all new hair growth since it got bleached. So it's been like however long it takes hair to grow. I don't know. Someone who does tests on people that smoke marijuana would know. Maybe like a hair cutter. Or like a doctor. Or like a hair specialist. Or like a multi-level media marketer that just like happens to sell specific niche boxes of hair shampoos and conditioners and whatever it is, that thing that you add. I can't remember its fucking name. Pulverizer. I don't remember. The occupier? What the fuck is it called? And the reason I dyed my hair today, and the reason I'm talking about it at all, making jokes about it, is because there's something about being queer that kind of necessitates it, in my opinion. Like, it's like other queers aren't gonna know, but also your soul just won't be as advanced or as capable of showing itself if you don't dye your hair. Some people still treat it like a tattoo, and some people still think tattoos are a bad thing. That's the crazy part. They're always like, oh, why don't you get it tattooed? I gotta pluck my gross eyebrows. What do I care? But, yeah. So the reason I dyed it is because I want to prove to the world that I'm willing to take my soul's direction at least this far. It's not that bold a statement. The red's kind of popping, though. The red is aposematic. That's what I used to say, to keep people away. And, like, that's actually true. Like, if a boy dyed his hair, they would stay away from me. But what happened is that it had the opposite effect, obviously, because, you know, oh, look how kinky she is. She dyes her hair. And I was like, oh. Certainly, accomplishes, I think, what I want it to, though. Oh, a bird. And legitimizes my position as a priestess. Now, having hair dye does not make you a priestess, but at least for the type of priestess monk that I'm becoming, it wouldn't be possible if I didn't have dyed hair. It just wouldn't. Yeah. So, one of the problems I'm running into is that, like, I have 16 gigabytes worth of recording space on here, and that's a lot. Like, it's not like a ton, but it's a lot. And what am I gonna? Oh shit! Ruh-oh, Raggy. Oh man, what a disaster! What an unmitigated, unfathomably tragic outcome for the day. There's no shot. There's no shot. Oh yeah. Alright, how am I gonna get this, some better walkable conditions? Oh, not ideal. Assuming that I delete it, right? There's no reason why I wouldn't record for 16 gigabytes, right? Like, that's the thought, at least. Because, I mean, yeah, like, why wouldn't I? Why would it die? At least attempt to say something or make something, create something, be something, do something, right? That's worth it. Just the attempt, right? And even if 10 years from now this is nothing but, like, secondary footage that they play on the, like, well, I mean, television will be very different by then, but the way that talk show hosts today, like, hello, live from Ellen DeGenerate show on today's episode, and then it's just like, you just see this very specific clip. Where are they today? The POV, the years 2032, and Ellen DeGenerate is just, like, still interviewing people, and she's like, well, by them they'll be Fae. They'll be using Fae pronouns. So Fae will be like, hello, Priestess Abigail, and welcome to the show. And I'll be like, yeah, you boomer fuck. How's it going? And that's it. They'll have to cut the cameras. Profanity is probably the thing that people want the most, you know? Like, there's 3 levels of words that you'll need to know. Like, the absolute foundation is what they call survival language. That starts with something to the effect of greetings. Hello. Shalom. Hola. Bonjour. Okay? Well, actually, that one's not the same, but you get my point. Hasta mañana. Right? You say that to the wrong person at the wrong time of day, they'll be like, this fellow's up to no good. Right? So, there's, you know, language is important, but the second thing that people often ask, like, How do you say shit and fuck? Like, every language has those words. They're universal and we know it. And it's interesting that, like, not all the words are created equal. Like, you couldn't say, you could say puta madre to somebody. You could say, like, como mierda, right? But you couldn't necessarily swap out the word mierda, which is like shit in Spanish, I guess, if I'm saying it right. You couldn't swap that out for the way we use fuck. You just couldn't. You couldn't be like, want a mierda? Like, doesn't really work, right? But in some languages, that word does mean different things, and oftentimes it just means just like whatever it is that raw impulse of nature is. There's a powerful word for that, and so we're timid and taboo towards learning those words oftentimes, but we'll learn the cuss words before we learn how to say, like, I love you, because it's too intimate. Like, when am I going to need to know that? I'm not sleeping with any of your men. Now, if you're a concubine getting sex trafficked, they're going to teach you that first thing. How to say all the different things that they want. You better know what it is. It's the most terrifying thing, right? And I'm glad that I've never had this experience. And no one really should ever have to have that experience. And the fact that when we're trying to learn a new language, I think it's goofy that rather than our minds going there to, like, protect ourselves from that, right? It goes to just like, how do you, like, insult somebody? How do you say hello? Then how do you insult somebody? Then you learn the questions. Then you really start learning it. But, like, always I find that's the culture, right? You teach profanity, right? Whether it's the profane or not. You teach the taboo. You teach the, like, I don't know how to better describe it. The anti-words. Like, they're words that we, like, use very commonly, but they're expressly negative. Like, the connotation behind them isn't supposed to be good. Like, it can be. Like, the F word, like, ooh. Like, you want me to fuck you, big boy? Like, that's like, so if someone says that to you, you're like, do I? Now you have to analyze it. So it could be a good thing, right? But it also could be, like, a bad thing, like, yeah, get fucked. We go back this way. This place is so small. Like, it's nice, don't get me wrong. I like having this, like, you know, 2 World Trade Center worths of surface area to walk about just doing nothing in the sticks. That's another thing that you need to know when you, like, learn language is, like, what are the common forms of measurement? Because if someone taught you to measure in World Trade Centers, you'd have a hard time communicating that to people. Like, they'd be like, oh, where'd you come from? And you'd say two World Trade Centers that direction. And they'd say, what? They wouldn't know what the hell you were talking about. So there's a hierarchy of importance to words. And I think it's been kind of inherently known within the soul of the human what those words are since language came out, right? Like, if you could teach another species, say like a dog, truly you could teach it language, what would you have to teach it first? Like, you have to teach it, like, the anger words, like panicking, barking words for, like, oh shit, intruder. That's the word we use, intruder. Or scum for short. Right? That's, they have 1 syllable for it, and that is a sharp sound. I mean, you won't actually catch me barking, but you know what I mean. You know? Like, cats aren't like that. They don't really meow at predators. They just kind of run under a bed because they're smart, and what else are they gonna do? People are interesting in that they can choose how they respond. Some people may respond very much like rabbits. Some may respond like fainting goats. Some may respond like a trained military professional, armed to the teeth. You know, and there's a large degree between that and a dog barking. But the words that we use are kind of important. Like, is it going to be important to know the words, for example, like street? Like, that seems to me to be pretty important. Like, if I'm learning, like, I don't know, any given language that has to maybe use that word. It's interesting to think that, like, the ability to travel somewhere where the language is so foundationally completely different is possible, whereas in all of history, and even throughout all of the formation of language, most of that wasn't possible. And where it was possible was either, well, very rare, or it was the genesis of new language. And I think that evolving language is happening now at a rate that is, like, as rapid as the fields that are pushing the language. And what's interesting is that sometimes it has to be distilled for the commoner. For example, the word meme or social media. Like, they're very wide and robust topics, but we almost use the words of them as sounds rather than what they're describing. Like, the words are turning into something different. Like, it is no longer that we're talking about media that is also social, that is also on the internet. Now we just say, your social media, what's your social? Right? Like, well, no one shortens it to social. I'm just a boomer, but that's not the point, right? Like, the point is that it has become such a common thing that something like Facebook, like, what you go tell that to someone even in like the 1920s, like, hey, you on Facebook? What are they gonna say to that? What? No, my face isn't on any books. Why would my face be on a book? I don't write. You know, like, how are you gonna even parse that? You got Facebook? What's that mean? Do I have a bunch of pictures of people's faces in a book? Right? So you see what I mean. And so, like, different words are coming into existence. There is a shortage of these words, and this is something I talk about all the time on my channel, that I'm trying to bridge into the world of the psychedelic. There are complicated words that we have kind of chosen and kind of used because, like, they sort of work, like the word, like, sojourner, for example. Like, it's like, is it quite the same as an explorer? Is it exactly identical to a naut, as if it's like a psychonaut or an astronaut, right? There's a specific type of, like, connotation to the word. It's kind of like, I don't know, the difference between using the word wet and damp. Like, yeah, they both describe the same thing, but there's actually a big nuance there. And I think that the word sojourner is just one of innumerable amount of words that people use to describe the process of being intrepid into the psychedelic. But there's a shortage of words, and while the words are now being created as we speak for things like social media, like, hey, what's Google, what's Twitter, like, these are words completely different than ever had existed before. Like, if you were to go back in time even like 50 years and start battling the way that just like normies talk to each other today, shut up. Woody the Woodpecker over here, pileated, big red. Same dude today, at least. I got my aposematic hair back. But I think it's fascinating that, like, we figure out what words are important. It's like, it's almost like a joke, like a rite of passage. Like, dude, you mean this is the first time you've ever heard the F word? We'll teach you that, right? It's almost a rite of passage to learn these things. The difference between children and adults is really, really staggering to me these days. As I become more of an adult and I realize how much more power I have, not over children. That's not really what I mean, but just like that a child just couldn't possibly have, that I already have. And, like, I definitely don't take for granted, but like a 12-year-old kid can't just go buy liquor and then give it to somebody else. I could, I choose not to, because it's not really the games that I'm playing. But I mean, I definitely have bought weed for people. Not kids, definitely not kids. But I've bought weed for people. Like my friends, like when I show up to a party. So, right, like just even those words alone can be understood because a weed has been around for a long time. Now the context of it may be a little bizarre, but I think someone with a brain could figure that out pretty quick. But the entire systems analysis of learning that you would have to like rebuild from the ground up, because like you can't just teach someone like what a highway or a car is. Yeah, you can show them a picture a little bit. Like, yeah, you can't just like teach someone what like the same way that like I don't have a word for like sarcoma, glaucoma, whatever else that rhymes with Oklahoma. Like, if you don't know any of those words, they're all very specific words. And sometimes it makes no sense for the common person to use uncommon words because it just wouldn't be viable. You would have to spend too much time just trying to learn the nuances of the words before you could actually like become a doctor, for example, right? Or program a computer, for example, which is even weirder because the words start to get like mixed together with machine code. So like our mouths are trying to pronounce things that are kind of only just symbols. Like talking about like desktops or run libraries or like you know, batch scripts or VBS scripts or whatever other types of scripts that you're running, you know. And I use a lot of like 1990s terms because I think they're more recognizable, and it's also where my brain was when that thing was like, you know, popularized. And I never continued to evolve into tech with tech. I just didn't. It's a whole other episode about why I didn't. So The answer is dyslexia and paranoia. Whoa, dead turtle. Wonder what got it. I would think probably not a human, but you never know. It definitely looks very, very like it was tortured. But I mean, I have no idea. Like, that may not mean anything. But I'm trying to think, like, other than like throwing this turtle against this tree, what could have done this? You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of force that would have hit there. That seems kind of fucked up. It doesn't seem like something I've seen nature really do. But like I said, I could be wrong. But yeah, I think that this could have been against this tree by a human. But this time of year, it also could have just been the type of thing that freezes, and anything that comes and just wants to eat it just comes and eats it. I don't know enough about how the nature works. A raccoon, for all I know, may have been able to snap its way in that, no problem. And I'm just making up stuff because I'm misanthropic and don't believe that people are always doing the best things for nature. And there's a lack of language, right? That's what I'm trying to hint at. And I'm not helping any by just bitching about it, because I don't know any words. But there's these feelings, right? Like the hum. Like, if you know about the hum, then, like, we can talk about the hum. But if you don't, then, like, I can't explain it to you, right? It's kind of like trying to explain to someone what a buzz is if they haven't experienced a buzz. There's just not enough words to be able to... Here's really what my gripe is. There isn't enough experience for the words to become necessary for even the commoner to learn. Like social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. If those words can evolve over time or fall very favorably, quickly out of fashion, like, no one's talking about, like, hey, what's your Hotmail Netscape? I mean, they never really were, but, like, you know, they're definitely not now. People might know what Firefox is, some of them. People might know what Chrome is, some of them. Safari, some of them. Internet Explorer? What's that again? I mean, like, it's inherent in the name, but, like, you couldn't call it, like, hey, IE. You want IE? Is that the platform you use? Like, again, I don't think anyone ever did say that, but you can't now for sure. So these words can fall very quickly out of favor, right? No one's like, hey, what's your MySpace? MySpace was a good name, though, at least. That a mosquito? Shit, I would have killed that if it came near me. They're the only thing out here I'll hunt, because you kill one of them now, how many thousands of eggs is it not going to get to lay? So I think what my gripe is that there's not enough psychedelic experience in aggregate within the populace in order to create the required ecosystem to form language. But like to create new words is really what I say. Like I forget what that process, Genesis, whatever is called, like, but that process does not exist where the experiences do not exist. Sex is another interesting one with that, because we can come up with positions, but you'd think that because people have it all the time, that there would be at least enough material that you can talk about it. And there definitely is. And people do learn it, but it's kind of like reading a banned book. Like, people try to really make sure that each other don't talk about that. Like, I'm not advocating for this. This is more of a thought experiment, but like kids talking in school about it, right? They're not really talking to each other, well, at least not within the hallways. Well, we should say after school kids of that age, right? Where the school does not have the per diem payment to take away your freedom of amendments, whatever, however you want to frame it, like outside of that faction. So the delineation is not actually that they're school kids. It's just that they're like not of age, right? Legally or ethically. But ethically amongst each other, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's try to police that. Like, certainly people are trying to police that, but like, it's not me. I'm not a parent, and I don't like kids, and I don't go in school. So like, to me, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's that like I have other things to worry about. But for this sake of argument, say two kids are talking to each other about like the very fine points of the ability to achieve orgasm using certain different types of friction on their labia, right? Like, that's like very problematic to most people. And like, trust me, I get it. Like, this isn't something I'm going to dwell on in hyper detail. But it stands to reason that if it was hyper normalized, we'll say, that there would be more of those types of discussions. And actually, as proof of this, I already know for a fact that more of those discussions took place since years ago than when I was in high school, where it just didn't exist, right? Like, you couldn't talk about any of that stuff to any of your peers at all. And there wasn't really an internet resource to talk to anyone about it at all. So people just didn't. And mostly they felt shame because of it. Especially with, like, the health aspect of it. They preached abstinence where I was from. Like, that doesn't work. Like, it's not that that doesn't work. It's that you can't shame people for that. Like, you can't. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. They can do it and they can triple down on it, and it definitely is an effective system to keep a lot of people oppressed. But it doesn't actually work to solve any of the problems, and it just demonizes and turns them into sinners, and it creates a class of person that is a sinner. Like, if you've never heard the word sinner, how are you going to know sin exists? I'm not saying that you won't necessarily know that evil exists when you see it, but how would you know that, like, sins, for example, like I being idle? Like, right now, like, what am I doing? Am I committing a sin against God for just, like, playing with this leaf and talking to you through a screen? Like, right by the Christian conception, some Christian conceptions, yes. And that's a real problem when it shuts down the ability to even talk about anything that isn't being oppressed. Yes, it's because it's like, because you're allowed to talk about it as long as it's being oppressed. But because it's being oppressed, you can only talk about it within their rails. There are some topics that are just outright banned. Psychedelics is one of them. Like, you can't talk to, like, and again, I'm not advocating that we should, but, like, say kids, again, after school, that are sitting in public, in a park, talking about psychedelics that they've taken. It's not an illegal discussion, but it's an illegal thing for them to have experienced. Maybe not, but to have experienced while possessing it, yes. Which basically makes the use of it criminal, because how are you going to put LSD... I mean, unless it goes like this and they dropper it on you so that you never, like, possessed it. But, like, if you have to play games with their system to that extent, it just proves the oppression, right? That's what I mean to illustrate. Like, is it unlawful for them to have the actual paper to put it on their tongue? Like, it's definitely unlawful for the drug dealer to possess it, let alone sell it. But say they didn't buy it, and say a shaman just gave it to them for free. Is the possession of the experience, is the experience itself unlawful? Right? Like, it's definitely... The system is engineered to make that question irrelevant, because the idea is just that you're stopping it from happening. It has nothing to do with the legality of it. Well, I mean, it does, but it has more to do with just removing that experience from the child or the adult from having a discussion and talking about it. Like, you're just not allowed to talk about psychedelics. And where people do talk about psychedelics, there aren't enough of us talking about it to be able to invent the words, because even when we have experienced it, and we definitely can make up a word like floop. Oh yeah, the part of the tunnel that looks like floop. Right? Like, you don't know what that means, but those of you who have experienced the tunnel and know those, like, you've also seen the, like, Windows, I think it was, like, 98, like, pipes that move. Like, the moving pipe screensaver. Like, when you see that, but it's in a tunnel and it's all going one direction, and it's, like, doing something, like, biomechanical, maybe, that's floop. Right? Like, and now that's just something I made up. Like, you know, but that's the problem. Because if you went to go talk about that, even once I've already taught you about it and you know about it, like, oh shit, wow, I really do know that. Actually, we did need a word for that. That's crazy. I didn't even think that we needed a word for that. But now if you go to your friend and be like, hey, did you listen to Sarah talk about floop? They're gonna be like, what's floop? And now every single person's got to get walked through it. Now, there have been definitely words where that has been created. I'm a living, breathing transsexual. That's a word that had to be invented because the behavior was self-evident and became more notable and prominent as the years went on. And even I don't believe this for an instant, 0.02 minority of us, I think it's closer to like 5 or 6% of every person, but that's just my own observation. And that could be because I'm surrounded, of course, by a bias. But it seems to be that a lot of people are very queer. And where queer behavior is not oppressed, lo and behold, a shit ton more of words come out and get created. You heard my partner on one of the last episodes that we did at the cemetery already speak about that, because their experience through school was very much different than mine. Generationally very different, and also just type of school very different. And the foundational systems that they don't undermine, they inform the language of, built into that is trauma by oppressive story for psychedelics, for example. So let me better illustrate that, because I think that was a bit of a word salad that I just tried to do. You don't know if your walls can get kicked in, right? Until someone tells you about the Kool-Aid Man. And after that, man, that's a different story, because kids are never safe after that. Because what if a wall just, I'm just sitting here playing with my Matchbox cars, and all of a sudden the Kool-Aid Man comes through? Like, that's terrifying, dude. He shouldn't be allowed to do that. Not only is that unlawful entry, but like, that's violent. Like, that's criminal behavior. The Kool-Aid Man is a crook. He's a criminal, right? He is a degenerate. So, but if you didn't know about the Kool-Aid Man, you may not even be scared, right? Now, say the rule is that you have to sit 3 feet away from every single wall every single moment of your life, because if you're sitting against a wall, the Kool-Aid Man could come get you. Now, your kid, you could easily traumatize a child for at least a period of time until they learn that you were an asshole and lying to them. You could oppress them, and you could make such a difference in their development. Think about that. Like they go to somewhere with their school that isn't part of the Kool-Aid Man boogeyman cult, right? And all of a sudden, you know, it's like private school to public school. You send them to public school, and all of a sudden, all the kids are sitting against the wall, and the kid's like terrified, like, you can't do that, the Kool-Aid Man. And everyone else is like, the Kool-Aid what? The Kool-Aid Man, like, he'll bust your wall in. That's what my dad said. He was serious. Like, I've seen it. I've seen Stable Diffusion create images of it. My dad told me stories. It's real, man. Right? That's the equivalent of the person who was permanently turned into orange juice, or the person who woke up 10 years later on a flashback, or the person who robbed a bank and didn't remember it and shot his wife, or whatever other fucking ghost stories that are just fundamentally designed to just demoralize you away from being intrepid into hallucinogens, which they have made into a dirty word inherently by telling these stories again and again from generation to generation. And it has fundamentally informed the people to the point where they all sit 3 feet away. It's the same level of deranged behavior. It's like, wait, but you could just try psychedelics. You could just sit near the wall. There is no such thing as the Kool-Aid Man. There is no such thing as the acid trip that never ended. And if there is, like, wow, well, okay. It's a shame that it's Schedule 1 narcotics and we couldn't study that. Actually, I think they may carve an exception if the express intent of the, like you set up an experiment, but you bias it from the get-go. Like, we are testing to see if it will cause permanent damage. Yes, that's what we're doing. But actually what it should be designed is we're testing to see what happens objectively. Right? But if you do that, then it's Schedule 1 narcotics. You're not even allowed to do that because you're not even allowed to possess it. You can't do research on it, so how would we even know if that was possible? Right? Well, we're just supposed to trust them? They lied about the Kool-Aid Man. Why wouldn't they lie about this? We'll be back after this. When I was out here as like a kid, and I really mean as a kid, like really, like I still act like a kid, but I mean like I was really a kid out here. When I was 13, I was like really thinking of like, should I just slip my wrist on this very specifically this tree? I remember sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now. They call this Turtle. Well, I call this Turtle Island, and so now they call this Turtle Island. But this is just like it kind of looks like a turtle. For those of you who have seen this before, usually what it is either one really big tree fell and just created a root ball, but I think in this case it's actually where they were digging with like equipment to create a false pond to build my neighborhood over there. And yeah, this is just where they like dumped all the dirt. I don't really know. I feel like this is the biggest tree out here, and I climbed to the top of it as a kid 20 years ago, you know, like truly literally 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, maybe even a little more, like closer to like 17, 16, however many years ago. And the things were really confusing and broken back then for me, and they still are, but like they're broken on a different scale, and the amount of information that I'm capable of managing and processing through, and the schematic of my worldview is a lot more robust. I'm not saying it's like a working schematic, right? This is an active disinformation campaign. We say it every day. But there's something about it, man, that I'm not who I used to be, obviously. And I don't really know what to do with a mind like mine. Like, it just doesn't seem that intelligent. It seems like intelligent enough to, like, figure some stuff out. But I'm over here watching What If Altist, like, oh, I don't know anything. So, one of the things that I was thinking about today is, like, it's almost the new year, and, like, I don't have any excitement for next year. Like, last year, I had, like, some excitement because I had a partner going into it, and it was, like, a very fresh new relationship at the time. And, like, I kind of just, like, knew that I was going to have a winter partner, and that I was going to be able to, like, have a good time with them and, like, evolve as a person. And then that happened. And now it's 2023, and there's no more room to grow. And I just feel like I've hit the edges of my pot, and there's nothing left for me here. I've exhausted all nutrients, and there is nothing left. And I photosynthesize in the summer, but there's no way for my roots to grow, and I don't know what to do now. I don't know how to get more space for myself. And even if I had more space, I wouldn't know what that would look like. Like, where's that going to be? What's that going to do? Like, my root structure has already had to start crimping back in on itself. And I'm very resilient to leaving my pot now. I will die, basically. My root structure will not really be able to grow as powerful as it ever could have been, and my tree will be withered and mangled the rest of my life. That's the fear, at least. And I don't really know what to do about all that. There's so many robins out. They're having a great time. Like, I've been here long enough to have now become part of the environment. I've been here about a full half hour. And, like, see, there's one over here hopping around, and then right to my right, there's 3 different ones, and they're all hopping around. And I think that they've just realized, like, I'm very clearly not here for them. I'm not hunting them. I'm not even really looking at them. As far as they're concerned, I don't, like, I'm just not fucking with them. I'm sure when I stand up, they're like, oh God, it's still here. Oh God, it's moving. But yeah, at least for now, like, I'm just like a part of nature. So that's kind of cool. And, but yeah, I'm just like not hype. Like, I'm not like dreading it or anything like that. I'm just not hype. Like, there's things that I'm hype about. I suppose I could pretend like that's true. But, like, the truth is that, like, I'm just not really hyped for that much stuff anymore. Like, I'm just kind of, like, floating, and I don't really have any excitement for anything. Like, oh, you want to hear my songs? Great. I've already had people hear my songs. They're not that great. They weren't that good back then. They're still not that good now. Oh, you want to read my book? Well, I'm not very hype about it because it's too disorganized, and I can't write it. I haven't created anything ever. There's nothing to share. Oh, you want my chapbook? Like, I had executive dysfunction about that, too. Like, every single thing in my life just never got created. I never had a team that I formed. I never had help. And I would have needed it. That's what's crazy. People are like, well, why didn't you just do it on your own? What, like, are you retarded? Like, like, you know, it's like, the answer is pretty evident, isn't it? Like, I'm disabled. Oh, goodness. I'm balding and disabled. Oh, goodness. The red is obviously hair dye. It's just obviously, it's freaking me out a little. Like, I'm still, like, looking. I'm like, oh, shit. Like, the red's back. I almost don't recognize this person this time around, and it feels like this scarf and the red coat, it feels like it's all got to go, and I have to just, like, become someone really adult and really new, and just, like, really swap my wardrobe. Like, this coat, this is good. This one works, like, as a style. Like, it just, like, it suits me. It blends in. It's inconspicuous, and I think I've become a little bit too conspicuous in my age. And I think that in my younger years, like, being a 24-year-old weirdo, no one's really looking at you, but being a 30-year-old, when you look like me, people just assume you're a flunk out junkie, and I'm sick of people assuming that about me. And you know, when I ask them what they think, they're not assuming that, but it's that they're not looking at me as if I'm serious, and therefore they're looking at me maybe not as the junkie, but they're not looking at the junkie either, and they need to be looking at me. Because the things that I have to say are more important. They really are. And they're more important for all of us, not just for me. And those who that the things that I'm saying are not important for, maybe not all of it is important to everybody, but at least for those who it is important to, it's important. But for those who it is not important to, my opinion at least, they're bad people. And they're not living in accordance with anything that is true goodness. They may be living in accordance with, like, some Bible that they tell themselves is gonna absolve them of their sins and get them into heaven, or some other sort of kingdom belief, right? But those people are monstrous. They're intolerant, and they are really antithetical to the human spirit, and they, even in their own micromanaged lives, where we live in a society, but like, look at you have like no front lawn anymore. Like, when's the last time you literally touched grass? And that's not even getting into talking about people in geriatric situations. Jeez, what a trip. I'll bet every other one of my friends is not in nature right now. No offense to my friends. It's just like, most of you have jobs. That's really the truth. I'm so sorry. My teeth are so freaking scuffed, it's ridiculous. This one here, they scuffed. Like, I don't really care that much, but it is kind of annoying. They're like, oh yeah, that'll grow back and we'll fix it. Well, it hasn't yet. Hold on. So, I kind of just know from experience. I don't even really know what's over there, but like, I know from experience that where I'm standing on this like weird white is pretty notable, you know. Like, and I've been back here often enough, obviously, to like know the layout of this place now. But like, this is like the very far side for me. Like, this is like the end of the adventure before the return trip, and I'm pretty far back the other direction. But yeah, whatever it is that's like through this forest, well, this World Trade Center area. Yeah, I don't really know. It's the same as everywhere else, I suppose. Over there's like a thing too. Over there's like another thing. But yeah, like, oh, it's been driving me nuts in my ear. I was hearing it like in my ear, like you're probably hearing it too. Wow, it's just so beautiful. Anyways, this is the highest point. That's why I came here, because I wanted to watch the sunset at the highest point, and it was a good decision. It's pretty beautiful today. These two are fighting. I wonder if they're in the same tree fighting for the tree, or if they're just kind of like chattering at each other, because that's kind of just what they do, you know? Like, hey, get the fuck out of my tree, you went up the wrong tree. Oh shit, bro, my bad. They don't really apologize, they just kind of scamper away and get angry. This is interesting. I think what the personality disorder is that they have to be the villain in your story so they can be the hero in theirs. And it's not really even that they're the hero. It's not even a hero complex. They just like, they need the negative attention. So like today, I live with a narcissist. So like, I went into the kitchen and I started cooking, and I saw two things immediately. One, that I was gonna get in an altercation. Like, it was inevitable. I'd already pushed it to 1 o'clock, which I wanted breakfast at 11, but I was just not going downstairs because I wasn't going to deal with the narcissist, right? But I had to. And so I waited till it quieted down, figured they're done in the kitchen. No. I come in, they're making a fucking stew. And so, okay, so you know, that's fine. But, like, I'm not retarded. So, like, I see, okay, there's a stew getting made. So the narcissist, needing attention, comes over and says, she says, hey, Sarah, I'm making a stew. Which, fine, innocent enough. But I didn't respond. So she came over to my space and yelled, because I was wearing sound blocking headphones. So she yells, I'm making stew, as if I'm retarded, or like that I care. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty self-evident. Which, you know, I shouldn't even have responded. I should have just gone back upstairs, waited 30 seconds or so, and then come back down and try it again once they were out of the room. But instead I was hungry. So I started making breakfast. And then that gave them permission to then be a wasp trying to sting me the rest of the time. Because they just, like, and they weren't even making stew. Like, there was nothing that they needed to be doing. They were just cross-walking around in triangles, hoping that I was gonna be, oh, you almost bumped into me. Like, I was in here. It's like, no, you weren't. You're in here trying to sting me as a wasp. That's what you do as a narcissist. That is what a narcissist is. That is the type of behavior that when you look at the root causes of it, you know, well, hey, you may not be able to figure that out. It may just be an individual part of the expression of the universe that just somebody has to be the pesky, annoying, horrible, annoying person. Because they just can't be that person in the background in your story, because you don't exist to them, right? Like the narcissist, like, you exist only in their story. That's why you have to go zero contact with a narcissist, because it's always about them. Like, it's your big special day. right? This is the classic story. It's your big special day, like you're getting married. And then they just find a way, no matter what, to shit the bed so hard that it becomes about them. Always. They'll get in a fight with whoever that they can over anything that they can, and they'll get desperate if the day goes on and the opportunity does not present itself for something that looks good for the lightning to hit. They will always, without fail, do what narcissists do. It's like, I don't care if they can help themselves or not. We don't give apology to pedophiles, do we? I don't give apology to narcissists. But Sarah, narcissists aren't bad people. Oh no, you're misunderstanding what we're talking about. And if you're talking about something different, then you need to go join that conversation, because what I'm talking about is evil. It's express evil. There is no redemption. There's no redeeming value. Yeah, they may be really good at making money for your company. Oh yeah, my boss is kind of a narcissist. At least he brings in a lot of money for our company. That's fine. But in the individual, personal, and spiritual lives of those surrounded closely who cannot disconnect at the end of the day, that there is no, oh, I have to tolerate this bitch for 8 hours, but then I go home, it's not a problem. Where they exist in between, that's their domain. And that is where they are often the most, what's the word, capricious? There's so many different forms that a narcissist can take, but it will always be the same or similar type of game, where it is so overly self-centralized that it actually becomes a power struggle, where they're trying, maybe not necessarily to get the spotlight on you, but they're trying to direct the spotlight, right? And they're trying to direct it wherever they think it'll make them look the best, if they're looking for prestige, or wherever it'll make you look the worst, which will also, it doesn't bring them prestige, but it certainly doesn't make them look worse than you no matter what, even at your expense. And they'll cut and bleed your fucking throat out to get what they want, right? Emotionally or literally, if pushed. But I think most of them are not ever really pushed that far. And really what takes the power away from them is just when you don't allow them to put the spotlight on you, or when they put it on you, you just kind of like walk out of the spotlight as if you're not supposed to be on the stage yet. And then when they put it on something else, then you can go back on the stage and hope that they don't push onto your stage. That's what they do. They charge your stage, right? Like if you're the rapper and you're out there just trying to live your life and you're the main character, or you're the shy little girl who just wants to go take out a book from the terrifying, library, oh gosh, with my anxiety I couldn't even possibly. Doesn't matter what spectrum of that you're on, they're gonna jump your stage. Whatever little bubble you're in, wherever you thought you could hide, through whoever they can get the number to give to them to, oh, it's your mother. They're always gonna be looking to put you back in their fucking story until you shut them down. And it sucks if you're stuck living with them, because let me tell you, it's impossible to go no contact when you live with a narcissist. This is Rainbows and Razor Blades. Thanks for joining. We'll be back after this. Part 2 of the narcissist game. So, the narcissist has now jumped your stage, made you feel like shit, disgraced you, and your audience is booing, right? Your internal audience is booing. Your internal audience doesn't want to be dealing with this anymore than it wants to be dealing with cleaning a toilet that somebody shit in and didn't flush. Like, it's an emotional problem that you're not forced to deal with because they came and they shit your toilet, right? That's the type of narcissistic thing that they'll do. There's no consideration for your emotional well-being. And it's not that they're recklessly careless about it. It's that, well, and some of them can be, but some of them can be strategically antagonistic against you. Because like I said, they're a wasp trying to sting you. But actually sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's more than that. They're not doing it defensively. No defense to the narcissist, because a lot of time they're defending from wrongdoing that they're perceiving, that they're inventing, that they're going and looking for on the stage. It's like a fan jumping into a boxing ring, right? And then getting mad when it gets punched in the face, and the narcissist goes, oh, I'm the victim. I'm suing. I'm going to sue you in emotional court. I'm going to passive aggressively take it out on you until I'm punished for it. And if you don't play punishment games, that's fine. I do. That's a narcissist. Somebody who will literally drag you by the fucking hair, punching you in the face emotionally. Or, as some of my friends, and especially females, have experienced from male narcissists, absolutely the exact same behavior physically will manifest. Not always. Not all narcissists are violent. That is, certainly part of the antisocial continuum. Anyways, I'm mostly talking about female narcissists today, but not expressly. But in general, so what they'll do is they're not even always necessarily going to try to be your friend. If it suits them to just be a passive enemy until they can jump your stage, then they're going to sit there on the other side of the boundary of the fence, right? Now, say security throws them out. Your emotional security throws them out. You shut them down. You explain to everyone else around you that why. It's like, I'm not putting them on trial. But if you see this behavior, like, it's going to end like this, and that's going to affect you in these ways. And narcissists are very, very good at playing for squares. They're playing Battleship, right? They blow up an emotional square. Hit or miss, they don't care. No one else is doing this, just them. They're trying to sink your fucking battleships. And once they know where your boats are, then they're gonna try to maneuver your boats all the way into the corner. I forget if you can move once per turn, I think is what Battleship is supposed to be. It's like each piece can move like a certain amount of spaces per thing, I think is what the game is. I may be wrong. That's the way I always play it. I would never ever want to play the game a different way, where it's just like a guessing game, like random skill chance. Well, it's not really random. I'm sure there's like a system or an algorithm that's like strategic to like go in some sort of Fibonacci or something like that. But like, I wasn't that type of body. That's what my friend said. I don't know if that'll get me canceled, but I say a bunch of canceled stuff. So anyways, we were talking about narcissism. I just had to take a quick mental break. We'll be back after this. So I didn't really want to actually even end the camera. So one of the things that a narcissist will do, one of many things that a narcissist will do, is they rattle on their emotional cage that you've put them in. Does that make sense? Like, you tell them, you're not allowed to call my house. Now that I'm fucking separated from you and I have my own wife, you're not allowed to call our house after 7. Now, the narcissist doesn't care that you gave them that directive. Not only do they not care, that's actually, they're going to shake those bars. And they're going to try to walk through them. Invited, excuse me, the prison guard said I could. I paid for this house. That's something you'll always hear. You'll always hear money weaponized against your emotions. And if you ever hear money weaponized against your emotions, you can be certain that someone is playing manipulation games. It doesn't necessarily mean that person's a narcissist, but it is certainly a manipulation tactic, and that manipulation tactic, universally, I would say, is wielded by a narcissist because power is the only thing that they're brokering in. They're not brokering in emotional stability. Someone else had a TikTok, and the TikTok said, I think, this is an older path that, like, that's why I think that there's evidence for probably the fact that maybe it used to, like, go this way, because this again was a phantom path, and this has been a phantom path for, like, literally probably 2 or 3 years now. But I do think that, like, up and until at least this point, like, how clear that this is not a phantom path. I could be wrong, but, like, it just really seems like there should be something right here where there's no trees of either kind. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it could have been for 10 years that there's been no path here. I really don't remember. I just, as far back as I can remember, there's never been a path that has gone this way, I guess. And I've lived here quite a long time. Decade. More than a decade. All this vines that used to be here, you see how they're all hanging? That you couldn't see anything, and then one day someone came back here and got rid of them. You know, it's not about the gritty fucking pep talks, right? Like, it doesn't matter how many Jordan Petersons or Carl Rogers or whatever the fuck this dude's name is, Tony Robinson with his chin in his fucking Family Guy episode. You know, it doesn't matter how many Joe Rogan types you listen to, or Hakeem Phoenix or whatever the hell his name is, Jocko Willix. You know, it's not gonna push you to where you need to be if you're not, like, I'll put it to you like this, the way I see it is kind of like a virus. Some viruses are beneficial, Pokerus, for example, and certain ideas can be beneficial to certain systems of people, and if you are susceptible to propaganda of certain varieties, or to persuasion or to magical thinking, if that's your predisposition, then these can serve as very real, tangible, utilitarian functions. Like, you're not just hearing arbitrary words, you're not just trying to play with fire. When fire and power is shown to you, especially when it's weaponized, man, it's quite persuasive. I mean, it's objective, right? How could it not be? And I think a lot of the male-dominated heterosphere, we'll call it. I mean, that's kind of like it's not going to be a female-dominated heterosphere, right? But you'd be wrong about that too. There is a feminine-dominant heterosphere. But speaking specifically of cis hetero-oriented generic white men, there's something wrong in the culture that pre-exists their lifetime, and they're either going to unlearn it or they're not. I think I will want my guitar if I'm going to talk more, and I will also probably want my other microphone, but I'm not in the mood to bring that downstairs yet because it doesn't feel safe here. Like, the moment I bring it down, the whole world could explode, it feels.